They didn't think I'd actually do it. That's the part that still gets me, even now, sitting in this kitchen with a cup of coffee going cold on the table, and the morning light coming through the window just like it always has. They looked me in the eye at my own retirement party, the party they threw, the balloons they hung, the cake they ordered, and they thought they were saying goodbye to a man who would nod and smile and ask how high. 62 years. That's how long it took me to understand that the people you love the most are sometimes the ones most capable of making you feel like nothing. My name is Robert Hale. I spent 34 years as a civil engineer with the city of Columbus, Ohio. I started as a surveyor's assistant, fresh out of Ohio State, with $40 in my checking account and a pair of boots that let in water when it rained. I retired as deputy director of infrastructure planning. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because it matters to what comes next. Because the story of how I got there and what I built along the way is exactly what my daughter and her husband decided they were entitled to. My wife, Joanne, passed 6 years ago. Breast cancer, caught late, gone in 14 months. We had 31 years together. She was a kindergarten teacher. She used to leave little sticky notes in my lunch. She thought I never noticed that she always gave me the bigger half of whatever we were splitting. I noticed every single time. After she was gone, it was just me and our daughter, Lily. And for a while, that was okay. Lily lived 40 minutes away in Gahana. She called on Sundays. She brought the grandkids over on holidays. She seemed like her mother's daughter, warm and present and real. Then she married Damon Schaefer. I want to be fair about Damon because fairness matters to me, always has. He wasn't a bad man in the obvious ways. He wasn't cruel or loud. He was the other kind of dangerous, the quiet, patient kind who smiles while he's measuring what you're worth. He sold commercial insurance. He was good at it. He knew how to make you feel like he was doing you a favor by taking something from you. The first time I really saw who Damon was, it was about 2 years after the wedding. Lily called me on a Tuesday, which was unusual, and said they were having trouble with the mortgage. The interest rate had adjusted.
Could I help?
Just a bridge loan, she said. Just until Damon's commission cycle caught up. I wrote them a check for $11,000. There was no repayment schedule because it felt wrong to make one. She was my daughter. You don't draw up contracts with your daughter. That was my first mistake. Over the next 3 years, the calls kept coming. A new roof. Maxton's braces? That's my grandson. He's 12 now. Gap-toothed smile I'd die for. Preschool tuition for my granddaughter, Bree. A transmission on Lily's car. Damon's mother's funeral expenses, though I later found out his brother had already covered most of them. I'm not keeping a ledger here, but if I were, it would show roughly $64,000 over about 5 years. Never a single dollar repaid, never a single conversation about repayment. Just a quiet expectation, and my quiet compliance. I told myself this was love, that this is what fathers do, that Joanne would have done the same. But here's the thing about telling yourself stories. You get so good at it that you stop hearing the truth underneath. The truth was that I had started to feel like an ATM with a beating heart. The truth was that Lily stopped asking how I was feeling. Stopped coming over just to sit with me on the back porch the way we used to after Joanne died. The truth was that Damon started calling me the old man. Not to my face, but I overheard him on the phone once in my own driveway, standing beside his car, not knowing the kitchen window was open. We just need to keep the old man feeling useful, he said. You know how he gets. I went back inside and finished washing the dinner dishes and didn't say a word. That was 3 years before my retirement party. In those 3 years, I did something nobody knew about. I started meeting with my financial advisor, a woman named Patricia Chen. She goes by Pat, who works out of a small office in Bexley. Pat has close-cropped silver hair and reads glasses that she's always misplacing, and a way of talking about money that makes it feel like she's talking about something much more important, which it is. I told her everything, the loans that weren't loans, the quiet expectation, the overheard phone call, the way I felt every time Lily called on a Tuesday. Pat listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. Then she put down her pen and said, "Robert, what do you want the rest of your life to look like?" Nobody had asked me that in a long time. I thought about it for 3 weeks before I went back to her office with an answer. What I wanted was simple. I wanted to travel. Joanne and I had a list we'd started on a napkin at a diner in 1987. Portugal, Nova Scotia, the Colorado Rockies in October. I wanted to wake up without the low-grade dread of what Tuesday's call might bring. I wanted to feel like my life was mine again. Pat helped me restructure everything. I won't bore you with all the details, but the shape of it was this. I set up a revocable living trust. The house, a 3-bedroom colonial in Westerville I'd owned outright since 2019, went into the trust. My investment accounts restructured. I designated a portion of my estate to the Columbus Community Foundation, a local nonprofit that funds arts education in public schools. Joanne used to volunteer with them every summer. I didn't write Lily out. I want to be clear about that. The plan was never to cut her off, or punish her, or make her suffer. The plan was to protect what I had worked for so that I could live my own life with it, and so that when I eventually passed, it would go where I decided it would go, not where gravity and assumption took it. My attorney, a man named Charles Webb, who has an office on High Street and a handshake like a closing argument, drew up the paperwork. Charles had done my estate planning for years. He knew Joanne. He came to her funeral. "You understand this will change things," Charles said when everything was signed. "I know," I said. "You ready for that?" "I've been ready for 3 years," I said. The retirement party was Lily's idea. She called it a celebration, and I believed her. I believed the enthusiasm in her voice and the texts about decorations, and whether I wanted a sheet cake or a tiered cake. I believed it even when Damon emailed me. Emailed, not called, asking if I wanted to talk about the future at some point during the party. I told him sure, of course, that sounded fine. It was held at a rented event room at a hotel in Dublin, Ohio. About 60 people, old colleagues from the city, 2 neighbors. My friend Harold from my Thursday morning poker group, who sat in the corner eating shrimp cocktail and watching everything the way Harold always does. I sat at a table near the front and shook hands and accepted toasts and ate the chicken they'd ordered, which was fine, and I waited. Damon gave a speech. It was polished. He thanked me for my service to the community and said I was an example to all of us. He said he hoped I was ready for the next chapter. He made a joke about me finally having time to fix the gutters. People laughed. Then Lily stood up. She said she loved me. She said she was grateful for everything I'd done for her and for the kids. She said, and this is the part I've turned over in my mind many times since. She said she hoped we could all support each other going forward, because family meant showing up for one another in real, practical ways. I recognized the language. Damon had written parts of that speech. She sat down. There was applause. And then Damon leaned across the table and said, quietly, like we were just 2 men having a reasonable conversation, "So, Robert, the house. We've been thinking that with the kids getting older and our place getting tight, it might make sense to talk about whether there's a path where we could." "Damon," I said. He stopped. "I sold the house." The look on his face. "I've lived a quiet life, and I'm not a man who takes pleasure in other people's pain, but I won't pretend I didn't feel something when I saw that look. Confusion first, then recalibration, then the very specific expression of a man who has just discovered that a door he expected to open has been sealed from the other side. "You? What?" Lily said. "I sold the house. Closed in March. I've been renting a 2-bedroom apartment in Clintonville, walking distance to Wylands. You know how much I like that place, Dad. That's..." "When did you?" "I've also restructured my investments," I said. I kept my voice level. I kept my hands flat on the table, and I've set up a charitable trust in your mother's name through the Columbus Community Foundation. A meaningful portion of the estate will go there when I'm gone. I've left you something, Lily, something real, but it's not what Damon was going to ask about. There was a long silence. Harold, across the room, had stopped eating his shrimp. He was watching us with the focused attention of a man who has lived long enough to recognize a pivotal moment. Lily's eyes filled. "Dad, I just wanted. I know what you wanted," I said. Not harshly. I want to be clear about that. I said it the way you say something you've been holding for years, once you finally put it down. Gently, because the weight of it belonged to me and not to her. I know what you both wanted, and I love you. I love those kids more than anything I've ever known except your mother. But I'm 62 years old, and I have a list on a napkin that your mother and I wrote in 1987, and I am going to go live the rest of my life from it. Damon pushed back his chair. He didn't say anything else to me that night. On the drive home, to my apartment, to the 2 bedrooms and the good light and the kitchen window that looks out over a quiet street, I called Harold on the car phone. "I saw that," he said, before I could speak. "How was the shrimp?" "Outstanding," he said. "You doing okay?" I thought about it for a second. The night air was cool for May. Somewhere on the Columbus streets a dog was barking at something it couldn't reach. Yeah, I said. I actually am. The calls started 4 days later. Not from Lily at first. From Damon, which tells you everything you need to know about who was really driving this. He called twice on a Thursday morning. I let both go to voicemail. The messages were careful, measured, the voice of a man who sells things for a living and knows how to modulate. He said he thought there had been a misunderstanding. He said he and Lily wanted to clear the air. He said he hoped I knew that nothing was meant the way it might have seemed. The "it" he was referring to was never specified. Lily called Friday evening. I picked up that one. She cried. Real tears. I know my daughter. I know the difference. She said she was sorry. She said she hadn't known about the things Damon had been planning to say. I believe that's partly true. I think she knew more than she was admitting to herself, the way we often do when we love someone whose choices we've quietly agreed to not examine too closely. Daddy, she said. She hadn't called me that in probably 10 years. I don't care about the house. I just want things to be okay between us. Things can be okay between us, I said. They can be better than okay. But they have to be different. You understand that? A long pause. Then, yeah, I do. I meant what I said. I wasn't trying to exile my daughter from my life. I was trying to have one. Over the next few weeks, Charles received 2 calls from an attorney Damon had apparently retained, raising questions about the timeline of the trust, about whether certain financial decisions made in my final years of employment were consistent with full capacity. The implication was what you think it was. Charles handled it. Charles is very good at his job. The attorney stopped calling after Charles provided documentation, including a letter from my physician and correspondence going back nearly 3 years, showing a consistent, deliberate, thoroughly reasoned series of decisions made by a man who knew exactly what he was doing. I was in Lisbon when I found out the calls had stopped. I was sitting at a cafe near the waterfront, eating a pastel de nata and watching the river go by. My phone buzzed with a text from Charles. All quiet. Enjoy your trip. I put the phone in my pocket and ordered another coffee. I've been to 4 places on that napkin now. Portugal, the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which Joanne always called the real beach. Jackson Hole, Wyoming, in September, which was everything. And 2 weeks ago, I came back from Prince Edward Island, Nova Scotia's quieter neighbor, and I liked it better, to be honest, because nobody tried to sell me anything. I'm going to the Rockies in October. Harold is coming with me. He's 70 and has a bad knee and absolutely refuses to adjust his expectations accordingly, which I find deeply admirable. Things with Lily are better. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely better, which is the only kind of better that counts. She came over to the apartment in August. We sat at the kitchen table and she cried, and I made coffee, and we talked about her mother for the first time in a long time, really talked. The way we used to before Damon's voice started filling up all the available space. She hasn't asked me about money since the party. Damon and I are polite at family events. We will probably always be polite at family events and never more than that, and I've made my peace with it. Maxton showed me a drawing he made of a rocket ship last Sunday and asked if I thought it was realistic. I told him that with the right education, anything was possible, and I meant it, and he ran off to show his sister, and I sat there in my daughter's living room feeling something I hadn't felt in years, like a man who had gotten something right. I don't have a tidy lesson for you. Life doesn't arrange itself into lessons, not really. But if I had to say something, if you ask me what 62 years of living has taught me, I'd say this: the people who truly love you don't need you to be useful. They just need you to be there. And the people who need you to be useful will call it love, and they'll believe it themselves, which is almost the hardest part. I have a list on a napkin in the top drawer of my dresser. Joanne's handwriting is on one side. Mine is on the other. There are 3 items left. I'm going to get to all of them.